Now, we've been reporting in the last half hour those new lines coming out from the White House, Israel agreeing to 4-hour military pauses in northern Gaza. Also information about 2 humanitarian corridors to allow people to flee the hostilities. So let's head to Washington. Let's talk to our State Department correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher. And Barbara, tell us more then in terms of what the Americans have been saying in the last little while.
What they have said is that they've reached agreement with the Israelis to have a 4-hour pause every day in order to allow Palestinians in northern Gaza, which is where the main military operation is, to flee safely to the south. And Israel, we have been told, would give a 3-hour notice every day when that pause would be. And the Palestinians, if they wanted to leave, would be taking safe passage corridors, which reportedly have actually been operating for several days now. But now they would have a cessation of military operations for them to take those corridors safely to the south. So that's the announcement. The White House is hoping to be able to use such pauses to get more aid into Gaza. They're hoping to get up to 150 trucks daily of aid. That hasn't happened yet. And also ultimately, perhaps to use pauses to facilitate the release of hostages. Now, it was reported previously that President Biden had asked the Israeli Prime Minister for a 3-day pause in order to facilitate hostage release, but also to get significant amounts of aid in. So he's just been asked if that was indeed the case, and he has said yes. In fact, he asked Mr. Netanyahu for longer than a 3-day pause. And when he was asked whether he was frustrated with the Israeli Prime Minister, he said, "This has taken longer than I expected it to." So, read into that what you like. But this is definitely something that the Americans have been pushing relentlessly through the president, through their special envoy on the ground, through the Secretary of State, to try to get not a ceasefire, but breaks in the fighting in order to get aid in and to help Palestinian civilians get to safe areas.
Barbara, as you were talking, I know in the last few minutes, Joe Biden has talked to reporters there at the White House before heading off to the helicopter. And exactly as you were reporting there, was asked about that 3-day pause for Gaza and a pause much longer to try to get hostages out. So we will actually play for viewers that clip here in just a moment or two. But quite clearly, in terms of the pressure from Washington on Israel's Prime Minister, it is upping.
Yeah, I mean, you have seen the evolution of the rhetoric and the pressure from Washington over the past month as the situation has changed, as the military operation has led to the killing of thousands of Palestinians, as the humanitarian crisis has grown completely dire. As the UN humanitarian officials said last week, there's no more life-sustaining functions in Gaza. And so the Americans, while they support the Israeli stance that there cannot be a ceasefire at this point because they say that would benefit Hamas, allow it to regroup, they have really been pressing for a break in the fighting in order to address this dire situation, to get a significant amount of aid in, but also, again, to try to get the hostages released. And there's been reports floating around lately about perhaps a deal in the making. We can't confirm that, but those talks are very active. So most definitely the pressure for some kind of break in the fighting, longer than an hour or two, which is what Mr. Netanyahu referred to in an interview earlier this week, long enough to actually get something done, has been coming from the White House and from the State Department.
Barbara Plett-Usher there in Washington. Thanks very much for that.